Yo, July 17th, 2025. It's a Thursday, okay? The topic on my mind today is the future of hitting in baseball. Not how hitting is right now, but the future. And the future of hitting is going to change because the way it's done right now, in my eyes, is passive, reactive. It can be more proactive and there can be more preparation involved to produce better hitters, to produce more complete hitters, right? Everyone in today's game is completely obsessed with the fundamentals. If something's wrong, it's fundamental, right? And everyone loves to examine every level of fundamentals. Like look at video of younger guys, older guys, like to look at fundamentals of pro guys. And people really love to look at fundamentals of pro guys and then try to teach that fundamental change or fundamental practice to a young guy. But like what people don't often understand, and there's no real perspective of this unless you know, is the amount of knowledge, the amount of repetition involved in a professional than a kid or a young adult or a teenager, right? It's hard to translate the professional game to the lower levels because it's not comparable. It's similar, not the same, right? And you could say that's obvious, but everyone wants to focus on the fundamentals. But I'd argue that hitters get to a point where their fundamentals, they can get to a point where their fundamentals are no longer flawed. Right? Like if they're off, it's just a tweak here and there. It's not really so much a fundamental flaw. Now, depending on the context in which you're talking about, yeah, pros can get to the pros and be a little fundamentally flawed, but they're so good at hitting a few pitches that they get all the way to the pros, right? That can happen, okay? Not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the guys who, when they're in a cage, tee, front toss, BP, showcase, practice, they look phenomenal. Their exit velo is crazy. They drive the ball all over the field. I'm talking about those guys. Why am I talking about those guys? Because that's who I was. Tee, front toss, BP, practice, showcase would look unreal, right? But you get to the game, and for some reason, your result, you can't find consistent success. You can never really get a feel for like any type of consistent success. If you do good, you kind of do good and you ride the high, and if you do bad, you just don't understand why. That's who I'm talking to, because that's who I used to be. And that brings me back to the point of the future of hitting. Last episode we talked about the future of competition, and we talked about wanting to get better every day, self-mastery. The future of hitting is a lot of that. Mastery of self, getting better yourself. I posted on my Instagram story today, Undiscovered Prospects, if you don't follow that already. You can't train your mind unless you train your body, right? And that's kind of a flawed saying, but it makes sense to me like this. If you can't physically get your swing in baseball to a place where you feel comfortable, then you're never going to be able to learn approach. You're never going to really be able to learn plate discipline. You know, attacking a zone, being disciplined in a zone, right? Because in a nutshell, this is how I'll describe it, right? I became a hitter, and I told you who I just was, right? Practice, showcase, tee, front toss, BP, I would look unreal. I could look unreal. I would get in the game and flutter, right? And I became a hitter. I got to the point where I would be in a box, 0-0, and if this ball was not a fastball outside first pitch, I was not swinging at it no matter what. I was sitting on one pitch, one zone. And no one teaches hitting like that. Why does no one teach hitting like that? Because it's hard to understand unless you hit for average. Unless you hit for average, and you hit for average intentionally, like you intentionally had an approach that led to you hitting for a high average, then you do not understand what I'm saying. But everyone wants to talk about power, and power leads to strikeouts. Everyone wants to talk fundamentals, but fundamentals leads to not understanding how to succeed in the game, right? You can hit very well off a coach throwing you BP, who's trying to throw you BP most of the time to make you look good, feel good. But the pitcher in the game is trying to get you out. So you can't have the same mentality approach to practice as you do showcase, as you do a game. A game is a game. There's a winner, there's a loser, there's an out, there's a safe. So approach. Training approach is the future of hitting. And training approach is not a reaction. It's not see the ball, react to the ball. It's see the ball, yes, swing, no, don't swing. Right? Yes, swing, no, don't swing. And that comes from the eye. That comes from hunting zones, right? Like I said, if it's not an outside fastball, I was not swinging no matter what. And I only played Division III level, right? But I did hit 400 at Division III level. I did become an All-American. So I like to think that I mastered the Division III level. And that's my opinion. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. I don't really care what you think, right? But I was just training, training with a D1 kid who went to Canisius College, which is, MAAC conference, the MAC, the little MAC, but Division I baseball nonetheless, and he had a lot of success, and he's able to transfer to Campbell University, which is like a regional D1 team. And I've heard all this talk about synergy, and I've never actually looked at synergy, but at the Division I level, Division II level, and higher, because I've also talked to a guy that played in the minor leagues, and he had a similar thing. You can see how a pitcher pitches and his tendencies. You can see what pitch he throws the most, where he throws that pitch. You can see what his secondary pitches he throws the most, where he throws that pitch. You can see if he has any more pitches that are even useful if he uses them that often. You can see yourself as a hitter where your cold zones are, where your hot zones are. So if you don't even know where you like the pitch, you can see where you hit the pitch the best, right? So with that being said, why do we not train to take educated guesses and build approaches? People always say, don't guess the pitch. Well, you can take a pretty darn good educated guess if you have a pitcher on synergy who throws 75% fastball, right? 20% curveball and 5% changeup. You can take a pretty good educated guess on where the pitch is going to be, and you see that he doesn't miss up. I was looking at this synergy, and you can literally see the zone. You can see that a pitcher never misses up. Or if he throws a changeup, it only misses down most of the time. And if you can see stuff that is that glaring, right, that close to being in the vicinity of truth, then why don't we train approach? Yes, you have to train mechanics. Mechanics have to be good. To get to a higher level, your mechanics have to be good. We know that. It's obvious. That's what everyone talks about. But your approach, and no one talks approach anymore. Like, the only way you can find videos on approach, really, is if someone happens to talk about it in a post-game interview, or if you go back and, like, guys who, like, in the 90s and, like, the early 2000s, they used to talk approach. They used to talk way more approach than guys do now. Guys now only get asked fundamental questions and have fundamental answers. Everyone's all over online talking about fundamentals. And fundamentals are important. But Yogi Berra once said that the game is 90% mental. The other half is physical, and I like to think the game is all mental. All mental, because everything comes from the thought of mind. You can't physically train unless you think to go do it. You can't go to practice unless you think I must go to practice. So like I would argue everything comes from the mind, right? So back to it. Teaching approach. You can take an educated guess and have a very high percentage chance that that pitch is going to be in a certain location. You can sit that and be prepared to execute a swing off of that to put it in a certain place. Like you can't hit an inside pitch and an outside pitch at the same time. If you read and react, you have less chance of, if you're reading and reacting and you go play at these higher levels, which again, I never did. The highest I played was D3. But even I realized it at D3 that I could not read and react, pick up the pitch mid-air and determine swing, don't swing. Like everyone likes to say yes, yes, no. Like you can't be yes, yes, no. I'd imagine it's very hard to be yes, yes, no on a guy who throws 95, an 87 mile an hour slider, and an 85 mile an hour changeup, and you're just going to read and react. You're just going to guess. When you have all of this data online to tell you exactly what this pitcher throws, where he throws it, how much he throws it, right? So again, like the future of hitting is training approach. And it's a game. It's like chess. It's like I move this pawn and there's only so many plays I have to move back. This pitcher only has so many pitches. And there's only so many things he can throw me, so I can take an educated guess and execute better on that guess than just reading and reacting and having no guess and just read and react. Why would you read and react when there's so much video, so much numbers, so much information on people you face nowadays? Even at the D3 level, we would watch live stream of the pitchers we're going to face. You couldn't do that in generations previous at these lower levels. But now you can do it at almost any level. Even on a Game Changer, I coached 13U. Some of these teams post video and you can watch their video. So you must train approach. That's the future of hitting. And the key is here. And I heard Trevor Bauer talked about this on a podcast. He talked about if he was a hitter, this is how he would approach teaching hitting, right? And it was this way, and it so clicked with me because this is how I hit my senior year to become an All-American hitter. I did not swing at an inside pitch, but no more than 5 times. No more than 5 times, because for me, that was the hardest pitch to hit. For me, at the D3 level, not a lot of guys go inside. And I swung at maybe 5 all year, and I guarantee, I know I hit a home run on like 2 of them, and I promise I probably struck out on the other 3 because I don't like that pitch. But the idea is that Trevor Bauer was talking about is you have to create an approach customizable to you, and you have to play that approach over time to win, right? If you just do the approach one game and you're like, forget this, it's not going to work for me, then it won't work for you, and that will be a waste of time. You're going to be like, this doesn't work. You have to build an approach for every count and use that over time depending on the level you're at, right? And that approach will adjust quicker and quicker and maybe go back and forth depending on the level you're at. The higher the level, the shorter like approach plan you can probably work with, right? But at the D3 level, I was able to use basically the same approach for all 44 games I played in. So let that thing sink in. At the D3 level, I was able to use the same approach for all 44 games I played in. Maybe give or take 1 or 2 games because the team was good and they knew who I was and they pitched me a certain way. But those were the 2 games that I knew they were going to do that, and I hit 2 inside fastball home runs that game. So if you're in high school, if you're in junior college, build an approach. And it starts like this. Don't think about what the pitcher throws so much as what pitches do I like. Start with what pitches do I like. We'll use me as an example. I struggled with the inside fastball or inside pitches in general, low inside curveballs. So I didn't want to swing at those pitches hardly ever unless I had 2 strikes. Outside fastballs, I dominated. I dominated the outside half of the zone. Lower half of the zone, like low middle, I dominated. High inside, high middle, I struggled with. Okay? I could hit curveballs in curveball counts. I struggled hitting curveballs in non-curveball counts. So then that forced me to learn how to hit curveballs better and how to adjust the curveballs on 2 strikes when I didn't know fastball, curveball, and you kind of got to be read and react with 2 strikes. That's the only pitch you have to be read and react with low key, right? But you start building approach based on yourself. You build the approach based on yourself, and then you take a look at the level you play at and the type of pitching you see at your level. Now, if you play baseball in Western New York at the high school level, baseball, Buffalo, New York at the high school level, you should be able to dominate the pitching that is around here. No one challenges you with velocity. The hardest you see might be a handful of guys that throw upper eights, a handful, out of the whole Western New York area, a handful. The rest of the pitching is 85 or less, and that's what you see most of the time. You should be able to dominate that type of pitching. And I use that as an example because that's what I'm around. That's what I played my junior and senior year of high school. You should be able to dominate that level. There is no excuse to be physically good enough, have a good enough approach you built out by mentally thinking, to then build an approach to dominate in Western New York as a hitter. Right? And then you master something, right? You get a good enough swing, fundamentally, physically, that you can hit. You can look very good on front toss, T, BP. That's your fundamental marker. If you can hit good on T, front toss, and BP, you're solid. You're sturdy. Right? And then you start to build an approach, practice approach, and then you get to a point where you master an approach. I would say I mastered D3 because I hit 400 at D3, became an All-American, and I built an approach that I mastered. Right? If I would have went to D1, then I had to, kind of build a new approach and adjust and become a better player and do that stuff. But at the D3 level, I mastered that. And that mastery of approach to hit for average and get success that way, that is what makes you a D1 player, a D2 player, a college player, get the opportunity to play pro ball. Your tools can get you indoors. Your tools can get you indoors into different rooms, right? But what takes you out of that room into the next room, what takes you from high school, being in the high school room, and takes you to the college room, could be a tool, but it's mostly mastery. Mastery of something. You can't go play D2 if you have a high school approach. You can't go play pro ball if you have a D2 approach. But everyone wants to talk fundamentals. You should be able to practice fundamentals pretty robotically, pretty not monotonous. It should be flow. It shouldn't be too mentally draining to challenge fundamentals once you become a solid hitter. You should be able to work through your fundamentals, Focus on an approach. Get better. Master something, right? Again, like always, listen back to this. Take notes. Listen the first time. Listen a second time in a different place. Take notes. Excuse me. Because information, what I just said, is dense. And no one is talking about it like the way I'm saying it right here. So challenge yourself to re-listen to this. Take notes. Get better as a hitter. Undiscovered prospects. Discover yourself so the world can discover you. Thomas Evans, Coach Red. Peace.
I'd now like to break up this video with a advertisement for my 2 digital ebooks at undiscoveredprospects.com. 4 corners of hitting fundamentals, 5 transformational pillars of hitting, $28 for the one, $20 for the other, $50. What is $50? $50 is not as much as you spend on gear. $50 is not as much as a $150 wood bat. It's not as much as the cleats, right? What does $50 get you? It gets you everything that took me from a good player to a great player, from a good player to an All-American player, right? Undiscoveredprospects.com. It took me from a 387 average to a 411, right? 28 games played to 44 games played. Look at those at-bats, difference. Obviously, I was playing better. 21 runs to over double, 59 runs scored, doubled my hits, almost doubled my doubles. No triples, 5 triples. 3 home runs to 12 home runs, doubled my RBIs, slugged it way better, right? Walked more, got on base more, 1 out of every 2 times. Every other at-bat I was getting on base, right? And I stole the bases very well, so I was a run producer, run scorer, everything you want to do in a career, right? What are you getting in these ebooks? You're getting the 4 things that made me an All-American hitter: the coil, scap loading, hands, timing. Then bonus content, detail about the process. The process will lead you into the 5 transformational pillars of hitting, right? How to coach yourself, how to have better pitch selection, how to have better pattern recognition, how to make mental cues, mental framework for physical training, right? Because that's essential to being a great baseball player. Bonus, I give you a 4-month mastery, how to use all of these things in 4 months to go from where you're at right now to a better place in the future, right? So why not? Why not buy these 2 ebooks? What's stopping you from being a better player? $50, not as much as those cleats, man.